1. Route 616, your home for all things Marvel main continuity. Hello, everybody. This is Ryan, otherwise known as RJ or RJ Epic One here, and welcome back to Route 616. We are here with episode 9, and today we finally get into some amazing Spider-Man. I am here with Bill and Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, everybody.
And
we're missing a theme song. We need a theme song. Right? Kind of go with the intro. Coo, 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 coo. Ryan's too young to know what that is.
Just a quick backstage note. This will be the last episode Dan's appearing on.
I didn't know where to go from there. I didn't have anything to work with.
We need music. We could steal a soundtrack from a 70s porn film or something. It would be great.
Well, I'm sure you have some material to use.
Oh, I'm sure I do.
Anyways, this week we're here to make Dan's life more miserable.
Fucking living hell is what they're gonna do, guys. No, don't bullshit them. You're gonna make my life a living fucking hell.
As we're gonna start covering Dan's favorite character, Spider-Man.
Not just one Spider-Man. 2.
No,
Spider-Man.
Dan is right. Not just one Spider-Man.
If we count by stories, it's 4.
I fucking hate you guys so much right now.
As today we have Amazing Spider-Man #1, the A and B stories. Since yes, there is 2 stories for each, as Bill has been getting at.
I'm fairly certain when they were publishing these initial Amazing Spider-Mans, they had originally intended to keep the run going in Amazing Adult Fantasy before they dropped the title in favor of Spider-Man. And so they were written as half-length stories to go in there, and they just used them in the books.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Half length or half-witted.
And then we have Journey in the Mystery #91. We also have Strange Tales #108. I'm no selling that, you motherfucker. A story and C story. And then we're gonna end off with Amazing Spider-Man #2.
That was a Natalia at a house show level no sell.
I will get my fucking revenge on you two at some point. Don't you worry.
What are you gonna make us read?
Don't worry. We have to keep talking about Johnny Storm books.
Okay.
We suffer plenty.
Johnny Storm, the Red Lantern. Yeah, whatever. Whatever.
Okay, so I want to start this episode. This has been pure chaos, so welcome back, everybody. So we're going to start with Amazing Spider-Man #1, the A story here, of course, which is simply called Spider-Man. We have Stanley and the ever-fantastic Steve Ditko here. Steve Ditko even gets a co-writing credit, which is interesting. He's artist and inker as well, and Kirby does help Steve on the cover, apparently. We got Andy Yankus as the colorist, and John De Agostino as the letterer. Man.
I mean, a note on the Steve Ditko co-writer credit. I'm fairly certain that's a choice of the website, acknowledging the work that the ink or the penciler does in a lot of these, rather than an official Marvel thing where Stan pretty much took all the credit for writing it.
No, I was gonna mention that too. Yeah, that's almost certainly the case because, and that's even rare for the website because that actually that still doesn't.
Yeah, usually they just transcribe the straight up credits in the book where we just have script Stan Lee. Art, Steve Ditko. Lettering, Johnny D.
I think you can really
tell... They don't even acknowledge the colorist.
I think you can really tell Steve Ditko's influence is high on this title for sure, though. As we'll get into more as we talk about the stories. Release date of December 1962, so Merry fucking Christmas. What a great gift. And to Dan, it was he was receiving coal. Oh, how was it like to get an Amazing Spider-Man #1 for Christmas when you were into your mid-40s or whatever?
You can bite me. I was 7 when this came out. and nobody hated me enough to try and give me a Spider-Man comic.
Well,
I was hardcore Batman at this point in my life.
neither of us were born yet, so.
Well, you're clearly just a freak and a public menace.
Well, at what point did you not? The memo went out about this.
Give me
ages
pictures,
ago.
Rick.
You guys should have known.
I'm waiting for Ryan to turn the page and realize what I'm referencing.
Well, we'll get into the characters that appear in this issue in a bit here. We're going to jump in on issue number 1, and I'm going to start us off here. Quick note just behind the scenes here. There might be a moment in case if my phone decides it's going to update in the middle of recording here, then we will pass the stories off the bill if I'm the one talking about them. But I will start us off. So we start off with just a page of Spider-Man with his knees all twisted in a lovely little way. And yes, this is Bill's reference here. Freak, public menace, as we see some figures with fists out and fingers pointing at Spider-Man, but we see a face that we will be connecting to the character named J. Jonah Jameson here in a bit. And
Gotta love Jameson.
Jameson's
He's so good.
JJJ.
We've got a little blurb here that's like, sure, you've read many stories about many different magazine heroes, but there's never been a story like this one because there's never been a hero like Spider-Man. And it's monstrous because Spider-Man there has no dash.
They also
oh, yes?
claim that they note that he first appeared in Amazing Fantasy 15. There they are noting it with a dash, so inconsistent spelling on the same page. And they claim that due to the amount of letters they got based on liking Spider-Man, he got his own magazine, so that is either a little bit of Stan Lee kayfabing, or this is the first character that was popular enough to be requested to be brought back.
Yeah. I mean, hard to say, honestly.
Yeah, really, it could go either way.
But yeah, we I was gonna say inconsistencies in early Spider-Man will definitely be coming up here, but it doesn't ruin the stories. But mainly the inconsistencies are in his names. But we open up after that.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we open up after that to a scene in the bedroom of Peter Parker, the teenage student whom many consider a shy bookworm. So we see him throwing his costume into his closet, and he's like, "Uncle Ben is dead, and I was too late to save him. God damn it!"
Quit your whining, you little fucking.
You couldn't let us make it through page number 2.
I tried.
This is also the rare red and black costume before they brought on the blue coloring.
That's a good point too. Yes, I actually like the red and black personally, but that's me.
Yeah.
We immediately, right after that little whiny Peter Parker moment, we go into the immediate retone of his origin, which is, I mean, makes sense. This is before the internet and everything, so this is perfect.
Yeah, and he was previously published in a probably not terribly purchased anthology book, given that it was the last issue of that book.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it was I think it ended up being like the hottest selling issue of the series, but it didn't.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, the book was already canceled.
It couldn't save it because they had already committed to canceling it, so they were like, goodbye, Amazing Fantasy. So we get a recap of his powers as well while he's thinking on everything. And then Peter Parker right away here thinks of how he could get money to help Aunt May, because we learned that Aunt May is in financial ruin since Uncle Ben died, and he immediately goes into thinking how he could use his powers and abilities to steal money and do criminal activities to get money, but he's like, no, I can't do that. I gotta bring my Spider-Man act before the public once more. I'll call a booking agent tonight. He's like, there's no way I could do that to poor Aunt May. I can't be a criminal. So then we go to a few days later at school. Fucking hell. Where we get some side characters. I was thrown off guard by Dan laughing there.
We'll talk about the level of my restraint later.
And so these kids in the school here, they're just like they start making fun of Peter. Of course, this is an
Of
ongoing thing
course.
that happens for a long time. He's like, "Oh, we might have known he'd rather study than go to a show." Blah blah blah. So then we go to the show where Peter's like, well, I couldn't be in the audience because I'm in, I couldn't be in the audience also because I'm the one doing the act. It's like, thank you for telling and not just showing. So we see at the show, the booker wants to, uh, write a check and isn't willing to give cash, but Spider-Man's like, name, I can't tell you my real name. No one must know my identity. He just make the check out to Spider-Man. So the booker's like, okay, you're the boss, but you might have a tough time cashing it. And so then we
For a supposed genius, Peter is not
no,
a
he's
very
not.
smart kid.
I think that's part of Stan's teenager writing, but we'll see. It could be Steve Ditko.
I think they didn't think that far about it and just figured it would be funny to
It
give him a
is
check
pretty
he couldn't
funny. They
cash.
give a little.
It is, but like it's completely
No.
not consistent with his.
No, but it's
character as
totally
we know.
consistent with the
He's
story
smart
levels
enough.
that they give, for Spider-Man.
But we do get a little funny sequence of him trying to cash the check, and he can't because he doesn't have identification. Blah blah blah.
And he thought it was a good idea to wear a mask
Yeah.
into a bank.
And we also, before the pandemic, we also get we get the quick little we get a quick little panel that shows us J. Jonah Jameson for the first time for most of his body here at a typewriter as he's like, when I'm through writing this article, Spider-Man will be running to town. And we go to the next morning where the booker is seen reading the newspaper, and he's like, and he tells Spider-Man he might as well go back to where he came from because he won't be booked on the show tonight or any other night. So he's been blackballed from the business. And Spider-Man asks why, what happens, and then he sees the story that says Spider-Man's a menace. And we then also see J. Jonah giving a lecture at the Daily Bugle. It's mentioned how he's the publisher of the powerful Daily Bugle, so it says. It's also referenced as the Now magazine at some point, I believe, in here, but I don't know which part.
I believe that's retcon to that he's the publisher.
Yeah, he
of
becomes
both.
the publisher of both in in a couple issues, I think.
No, it's literally today we will be covering stories when
Okay.
he writes for Now. I think maybe
Well, that's what I
even
was-
in this book.
that's what I was
can't
getting
remember
at. I'm
if it
pretty
was the
sure it's in
stories
this
from issue. Yeah, and what I'm saying is it's not. It might be an error, but it's one that they retcon and never really contradicts anything.
They do mention in one of the issues I've read since that they mentioned Now and Daily Bugle. They mentioned both, but then the Now.
Yeah, because they realized pretty
Yeah,
quickly
exactly.
what they were
So,
doing.
but then obviously the Now magazine part of it was dropped very quickly, and he just became the Daily Bugle guy.
The famous Now speech.
So, so we see Jonah get fucking hell. Jonah's giving a speech, and he's like, "Oh, Spider-Man must be outlawed. There's no place for such a dangerous creature." Blah
Fucking
blah.
right. Hallelujah, brother. Fucking man. Jonah's my goddamn hero.
J. Jonah Jameson is gonna be Dan's boy going forward.
Fucking right.
We have
Best character in that fucking title. Best character, hands down. Only one who even comes close is Green Goblin.
so we then see Jonah going into talking about real heroes such as his son John Jameson, who is a test pilot and is going to be taking a test in a rocket later on.
I'm sure that won't be relevant at all.
that's not important. So we
Although I do like that they gave in the very first story, they gave Jonah motivation. Instead of just having him a fanatical antagonist for the sake of having a fanatical
General
antagonist, they gave
Shut
Jonah
up.
an actual. Yeah, exactly. They gave Jonah an actual reason to hate Spider-Man.
Oh, let me count the ways. Whiny little bitch.
so we see Peter.
Nobody likes me. I'm no fan.
We see Peter's just going around town trying to make some money. Oh, these are gonna be so chaotic reading these
Come on, Peter,
issues.
down this alleyway. We'll
So-
give you some money. You be a good boy. Say my name. Say
Peter-
my name.
Peter then sees Aunt May pawning her jewelry and gets really saddened that she's doing that. So he realizes that he gets really angry, starts punching the wall. He's like, I gotta earn some extra money somehow. I can't let Aunt May down. Blah blah blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
So we then move on to the next day, and they're like, oh, with nothing better to do, Peter Parker decides to be among the spectators to see John Jameson fly into orbit. So so he's all in his astronaut get up and blah blah blah. He gets in the rocket, and he goes for takeoff, and quickly they lose control of the rocket. So we have a red light flash, and John James is like, that can only mean one thing. I've lost heart of the guidance device, and so his capsule's going down. They try to burn it down with a parachute and net, but it doesn't work. Thankfully, Peter Parker's in the crack, so that means Spider-Man's gonna hop into action. He's like, I'm the only one that can take care of this. So he goes over, and he interrupts a surgeon or whoever is with J. Jonah Jameson, and he's like, well, let me have the missing unit. They're talking about this guidance unit that they can get Jameson back with, hopefully. He's like, I'll get it to the capsule, is what Spider-Man's saying. And the surgeon or whoever it is like, very well, we have nothing to lose. And then Jonah's like, Spider-Man, he's just seeking publicity. And Spider-Man tells him to shut up and goes to save his son. So he takes
Wow.
he doesn't
Rude
actually
much,
say that.
Peter?
That's just my that I just buried Spider-Man the Dan even more, but that's my wording. Spidey takes the jet, flies up to the capsule.
I mean, he is pretty rude to Jonah in the original
what-
text, too. Instead of flapping your lips, mister, just watch and see what I can do. And he just grabs the thing out of the guy's hand and jumps out the window with it.
Halt. Time out. Peter takes the jet? Did I just hear you say that?
Yes.
He has a pilot.
Okay, so there's somebody else flying it. It's not flying
Yes, he's not flying the plane.
Powers.
He's commandeered a plane and the pilot, it does say, but they don't actually show the pilot, so you could miss that easily.
No, but they have speech balloons from the pilot.
They have a whole one or two here.
So he hijacks the jet.
Yes, basically.
Jonah's right. This guy's a menace.
So Spider-Man stands on top of the jet.
And they do show the pilot on the next page, Ryan.
I didn't flip the page before that. So Spidey shoots a web out, gets it attached to the capsule, and he's like, oh, I mustn't let go. When he gets dragged by the webbing, he somehow makes it up to the rocket against all the velocity of the wind resistance. And he gets himself attached to the capsule. He gets to the part where he needs, and he launches out a successful. Shoot. Parachute.
Somehow the guidance capsule launches a parachute. I don't know, but this
Even
is
though we
Stanley
already saw a
science.
parachute get ejected but failed before.
Well, that time they had a net hanging from the parachute that they were trying to trap the capsule in, because falling in a capsule wrapped in a net is so much safer than just falling
Also,
in a
I love
capsule.
the shape of the capsule. It doesn't really make any sense, but we'll go with it.
You can make fun of it, but it's fairly accurate to what the actual capsule they used for early launches were.
It's just something that's mind-boggling to me. So Spider-Man succeeded. The capsule's about to land, and John Jameson does end up being saved. And then Peter lands, and he's like, oh, I better make myself scarce. Don't want to... I'd be just embarrassed if anyone wants to congratulate me. And then we see him get home. He takes his suit off. And then we see him...
Dick.
We see him reading the next edition of the newspaper, where Peter Parker is astounded to see... we see a headline here that says, this newspaper demands that Spider-Man be arrested and prosecuted. And we see editorial by J. Jonah Jameson written there as well.
You go, JJ.
So, it's actually JJJ, but...
JJJ.
And we... We see another lecture by Jonah where he's like, "Oh, it was a plot by Spider-Man from the beginning to steal the spotlight from my son." He's like, Spider-Man unlawfully broke into a military base and commandeered a plane by force, which isn't technically wrong. Um, then, by means of a grandstand play, he tried to make a hero of himself, but he caused an important missile test to fail and set our space program back by many weeks. So essentially, Spider-Man is the reason that Russia beat America.
I think my intelligence circuits are melting.
I mean, his costume is red.
Oh my God, we just uncovered it. So, we then
No,
see...
you're right. Spider-Man is the Red Menace.
So people are fearing Spider-Man more than ever so far, and now under pressure that we see a wanted poster has now been made, and it says, "Caution, he is dangerous. Report him to nearest FBI office. Spider-Man reward first capture." So Spider-Man is now wanted, and then we end the story, not the issue. We end the story with Peter thinking to himself as we see Aunt May saying it loud, "Oh dear, I certainly hope they find that horrible Spider-Man and knock him out before he can do any harm." So,
I love his own aunt just casually burying him to his
she
face
does
without
that a
even
lot.
realizing it.
And we end off
Now
with...
I'm gonna go off and have sex with Tony Stark, sweetie. See you later. Okay, you hand me my walker.
Ew! This is like
Yeah.
ancient Aunt May. This
Hey,
is not
hey,
Marissa
Tony
Tomei.
Stark.
Are you
Gilf
being
Hunter.
ageist? Are you?
No, but
Well,
Tony is.
apparently he's got no problem with it now.
we end on the promise of more Spider-Man stories, and so there shall be.
Oh, there's a promise.
And at that point, we are done the A story, and I guess we can chat about it a little bit before we go right into the B story.
It
So,
stinks.
how are we feeling?
And nothing bad will ever happen
Oh no,
to John
That's
he
right.
Jameson
lives a
again.
perfectly normal life as a happy little astronaut.
Yay!
Never turns into a
Nope,
weird
nope,
werewolf
never
thing.
happens. Do we? So I mean, off the bat, great introduction for J. Jonah Jameson is what I'm gonna say.
This issue was
is.
great
I mean,
overall.
we still have a story, but yes, this. This is really good.
Yeah, well, the story is
Um,
really what I meant.
John Jameson won't appear again until issue 41 of this title, so we won't see him for a while. J. Jonah Jameson is a very regular character from the start, which is very cool because he's
Well,
one
he
of the
should
best
be. He's the most important character in the story.
And besides that, they're actually all the other characters are from Amazing Fantasy 15. So, yeah.
I have nothing to say about this story. Nothing.
Well, I guess that's fair. You said most of it while we were going through it, I suppose.
Told you. Amazing restraint. Amazing restraint.
I gave this one 3 stars. I know Bill went higher, went 4, didn't you? Yeah, so which you're more in line
Yeah, I
with the
gave it
average.
4.
I don't know. I was a little underwhelmed, but I still liked it, but I didn't really like. I wasn't full.
Can you
fully
give
into
it
it.
negative stars?
No, you can't even go to 0. You have the lowest is 1.
Well, that system's rigged.
We can't even do half stars.
I mean, that's just the way 5-star rating works
Or
on
rigged
pretty
in
much
a
any
Republican
website.
primary.
There's not a way to put in. There's not a way to put in a 0-star rating and actually have it register in something.
Well, okay, I guess I'll give it a 1. Not like I have a choice.
You're a bastard.
Honestly, it wasn't entirely horrifying.
If you actually read this, you probably would have given it at least a 3, like I did, because you'd
No,
probably
I wouldn't.
You'd be popping for J. Jonah Jameson.
I love J. Jonah, but this whole spider sense has a special frequency that it can pick up.
Did we even cover
Crap.
that here?
No, but I'm sorry. It's just there's so much crap.
We haven't even gotten to that yet.
It's crap.
I think blaming Spider-Man individually for the excesses of the time, and not even just in Marvel.
Oh no.
Marvel,
Not
just in
Marvel.
comics in general, is kind of unfair. That sort of like Spider Sense has a specific frequency bullshit is just something that all comic
That's
books
true.
were pulling at that time.
That's true. But I won't lie. I just fucking Spider-Man irritates the fuck out of me.
Really?
He's just so two-dimensional as a character. You know, like anyway, keep on going. Pretend to
So, moving moving on to the B story, we have
I'm trying to.
moving on to the B story, we have Spider-Man versus the Chameleons. Speaking of bullshit, one of Spider-Man's longtime interests and villains. We have John Duffy joining for lettering on this one, and this one's only a 10-page story.
And for some reason in the book they spell
Interesting.
Duffy Duffy. And the worst thing is, he's the letterer. He misspelled his own name.
Maybe he was trying to disown himself, like oh look, it's Spider-Man. Let's just pretend.
Maybe.
I had nothing to
not
do with
me.
Chameleon.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll let Bill take this one.
All right. Well, this one opens with Peter once again trying to figure out how to make
I'm
some
telling you,
money
Peter, down this alleyway.
as Spider-Man, and he sees a convenient Fantastic Four comic book and decides he'll make the money by joining the Fantastic Four. So he heads over to the Baxter building and tries to get in, but of course the elevator doesn't work because he doesn't have the little zappy thingy that activates it that they've been plugging the hell out of in Fantastic Four books. So he goes over to the next building. I'm going to ignore whichever one of you that is that's snorting. Of course it's Dan. I'm now just going to try to tell this in a manner that will break Dan the most. So he goes over to the next building and changes into Spider-Man, and Tightrope walks across to the Baxter building, where Johnny Storm is just casually setting things reading material on fire.
451, motherfucker.
And they see Spider-Man coming under ample security systems, but he gets in the window before they can drop the security barrier. Or so he thinks, until the barrier closes behind him and he ends up sealed in this like plexiglass tube to keep him contained. And he manages to break out of that despite Reed complaining about how expensive his machine is, and immediately gets punched by Thing. But he throws Thing away and knocks Johnny out of the air with Thing. Then he dodges an attempt to grab him from Reed and webs him up. And Sue tries to lasso him, but he senses her behind him, and so he dodges out of the way, sending Sue spinning. And by now Johnny's recovered and tries to trap him in a ring of fire, so he just sticks to the ceiling. And having humiliated all of the Fantastic Four, he decides that now is his time to ask for a job. So he asks them to hire him and give him their top salary. And they tell him they don't actually make any money. They just basically get living expenses, and everything else goes to scientific research. And they also don't want a criminal working for them. And so he throws a hissy fit. And you didn't even let me get to describing him whining, Dan.
It's Peter Parker. Of course he's going to whine.
Fair enough. And he storms out of the building. And then we cut to a different part of town, where the Chameleon disguises himself as a janitor and then a scientist to get into some sort of a research facility and steal secrets for the Iron Curtain countries. And he sees the news about Spider-Man tussling with the Fantastic Four, so he decides that he'll have Spider-Man take the fall for his crimes. So he works for a while and figures out how to broadcast on Spider-Man's spider frequency. There's your bullshit, Dan.
Sorry.
And so he sends the message to Peter, telling him to meet him
On a
at the
special
roof
ant
of Lark
frequency.
Building at 10 p.m. And that'll
How
be
many
very
goddamn
profitable.
frequencies do
for
they
him.
have that are special secret frequencies? Okay. Way too fucking
How many superheroes
man-made.
are there?
Oh, I'm just wondering if like Ant-Man's running around somewhere going, Spider who? Spider what?
But don't you know spiders and wasps are natural enemies?
You know what?
They
I
won't
can
associate
see.
much.
I could.
That
I
would
could
might even
literally see
escape
her
Ryan.
beating
I
the
don't
crap
know
out
if
of
they
Tom.
read far enough.
She could too. She's one hardcore girl. Wow.
Well, and distracted by thoughts of Jan Van Dyne and move on with the story. And we see the chameleon disguising himself as, I guess, the elevator guy to get into the building. And then he changes into his Spider-Man costume and uses a handheld web gun to web up the guy in there to steal plans. And he steals the plans and runs to the roof where he's got a helicopter waiting for him. He gets into the helicopter and flies away just as Spider-Man arrives. And Spider-Man's standing there like, where's the guy? Someone was supposed to meet me and give me lots of money. And he's still trying to figure this out when the police show and tell him that they want the secret plans he stole. And he finally figures out what happened. So he webs the police into the doorway and takes off to track the helicopter using his spider sense's ability to tune into it. And so he makes a slingshot from webbing and launches himself over the city and then builds a parachute which he uses to float down into a motorboat which he steals and sails out to the Russian submarine that the helicopter is landing on. And he immediately webs up the conning tower so the helicopter can't land properly. And he gets onto the helicopter and climbs in, rips the door off, and catches the chameleon and makes him fly back to the building where he stole the plans. And he's like, here's the guy you're looking for. He stole the plans and impersonated me. And Chameleon just drops a smoke bomb and runs away. And so he sneaks into the building and disguises himself as one of the cops. And so they decide that it must be... Well, then he shuts off the power. And Spider-Man tries to web him up, but he's run out of web fluid. And so he starts just fighting with him. And when the lights come back on, all the cops just see Spider-Man fighting with a cop. So they try to arrest him. And he breaks free from the tussle and climbs out the window and up the wall. But when he was fighting with the chameleon, he ripped open the police uniform. So all of a sudden, all the cops noticed the Spider-Man uniform underneath and realized that they've got the actual chameleon. And Peter runs home crying. And the Fantastic Four read the article and they're like, maybe he's not so bad.
Oh
and
my God.
That's the end. And you think I'm exaggerating about the crying, but he's like, nothing turns out right, sob. I wish I had never gotten my superpowers.
Legitimately,
So he
yes.
actually does run home crying. This was not as good as the first story. This was a 3-star.
I gave
was
this
still
3
a lot of
stars
fun,
as well,
but it
which
wasn't
means
nearly
I
as good
gave
as the
both
first
3
one.
stars. This is, weirdly enough, the B story is actually the one that's more remembered or more talked about out of the two, even though the A story is better, probably.
Yeah, well, nothing
I mean-
happens in the A story, really. Like, the John Jameson rescue is pretty inconsequential in the greater scheme of things. We never see John again for, like, 40 issues. And this is barely mentioned going forward. So, like, it's really just establishing who Spider-Man is for people that haven't read Amazing Fantasy and kind of resetting the status quo. Whereas story B introduces a supervillain, he interacts with other people in the world. Stuff actually happens in it, so it is definitely the more important story.
The Fantastic Four crossover is cool. Apparently, we needed 6 more pages of content though from it. So
One big takeaway from this: Ditko should not draw
I forget
Reed.
his. I wasn't looking at the story as you're talking about, so I forget his read. Yeah, that's not great.
Every single time he draws Reed, he's
I
got him
love the-
stretched out in some weird and awkward
I
fashion.
love the one where he's
Kirby
just a
does that
giant
much
fucking
better.
square with his arms out and then his neck all curved. That's my favorite.
Yeah, it makes no
He
sense.
does draw a better shoe though.
Ditko should not draw Reed. Yeah, the rest
Just
of the
Mr.
Fantastic Four,
Fantastic.
he does better than Kirby at this point.
Yeah,
But his
that's fair.
Reed is god awful.
Yeah, any more thoughts on the B story of Amazing Spider-Man #1? I know Dan loved it, so
Crap.
well,
It's a story.
oh, I hate you.
What?
Oh man, fucking.
I
Peter
just don't have
Palmer.
the energy to try and find something positive about this one.
apparently not.
I mean, you don't really need to find the positive in the
That's right.
Spider-Man
That's right.
stories. You've got me and Ryan for that.
That's
You're the
true.
one to talk
That
us
is
off
true.
the ledge about strange tales.
Yeah.
Not very successfully, I might add, but still.
Yeah.
No, I still hate them. But he has brought
yeah.
up some good points
I
about
try.
why they're not quite as terrible as I thought they were.
I mean, all of these comics are a product of their time, right? We're looking at it through a mirror.
Yeah.
Having experienced, everything from the Image heyday to, Claremont, and, all the rest of these amazing writers and artists.
Yeah,
and,
we've experienced
in-depth
all the
stories.
classics.
So I mean, we have.
We've had
Even
Marvel.
it's been so long. I really don't have any great ability to transpose myself back to that time. But
Yeah. And, like,
yeah,
to be fair, when I'm saying, like, these Spider-Man are good, really what it means is they read by, like, something from 1965 instead of 1963. They're still not fantastic by modern standards. They've got a lot of the random bullshit and conveniences and so that you just expect from comics of the era.
Yes,
They're just a step ahead of everything
The
else
reason
that's
these
going on.
Spider-Mans are so good, is in comparison to everything else that we're reading in the order right now.
And I think that's one of the things that continues with Spider-Man, at least up until the 80s. It always seems to just be slightly ahead of what
I
everything else
couldn't
is doing.
attest to that one way or the other. I do find the one thing that all of us are trying to do, even though we're not that successful sometimes, is find the perspective of looking through this, like a looking glass, where you step through it and you put yourself in 1963, and the times, and for the times, this was probably exciting stuff. I mean, between this and Thor and Hulk, I mean, there was some new stuff coming out and new heroes, and it was all probably pretty cool. And these kids probably loved it, no matter how repetitive it was or how predictable it was. If you were like 8-10 years old reading this stuff, it wasn't repetitive or anything. It was fucking exciting shit.
Yeah, plus at that age, you want a
the
certain
bad
degree
guy
of
needs to be
repetitiveness.
wearing a black hat, right? You know, they do it in Star Trek.
Like the
No,
wanting.
they did it in Star Trek.
go
and
ahead.
all the TV shows like Maverick and Have Gun Will Travel and The Wild Wild West and Gunsmoke. The bad guys wore black hats, the good guys wore white hats. Maybe not 100% of the time, but the bad guys needed to be bad, right? And they needed to be demonstratively evil.
Yeah.
And, for younger kids, these comics like Spider-Man, kids probably absolutely adored him because he was young enough for them to identify with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes Spider-Man good, actually, is that unlike a lot of the other comics of the time, he doesn't need a teen, like an audience insert character added, like a Rick Jones.
Yeah,
He's
and that's
just
probably
the audience
the biggest
insert
appeal
character
to him.
himself. And that fits a lot more organically into the comic because you're not having this kid showing up in all these bullshit situations, and it's like, why is a normal kid allowed
I think
to
it's
be
one
here?
of the things that there was so much wish fulfillment with the original Captain Marvel. The boy who could turn himself into a superhero when he said Shazam. Right? He was still a little boy, but he could become a super strong superhero. And there was a lot of wish fulfillment in that. And when you looked at Dick Tracy with all the cool gadgets and the very bad guys with their disfigured faces, and Fu Manchu was had the evil mustache and all that stuff, right? This is no different. All right, the bad guys have to be visibly, demonstratively bad, and to have a teenage boy be able to defeat these grown-ups was very cool. We saw it with the Hardy Boys. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Fu Manchu.
And
man.
we'll get to Fu Manchu. Don't
God.
worry.
Fu Man.
Hopefully you like his kid, too, because we end up
Baby
reading
Chew?
about him a lot.
Oh, well, that's
Shang-Chi
cool.
is
I like
originally
that.
Fu
I'm good with
Manchu's
that.
son. They eventually had to retcon that out because they lost the rights from Sax Rohmer to use Fu Manchu.
Okay,
but
that's super
originally
cool.
he was Fu Manchu's
I did not
son.
know that, but that's super cool.
The more you
That's
know.
Indiana Jones level shit. I like Shang-Chi better now.
Yeah.
Not as much as Iron Fist, but I do like him now. Anyway,
Shang-Chi's
Yeah.
better. Shang-Chi's better.
I've always
Yeah,
enjoyed Shang-Chi.
They're both pretty good, yeah. I
They're
just
both
want to piss
pretty
Dan
good,
off.
actually.
I loved Iron Fist.
Chew,
we'll
later
get
this
to that when we
episode.
cover more Spider-Man. Or, in fact, when Dan realizes
Good-
we'll task him with describing
Good
future
segue.
episodes.
As we're going
is
into
it my turn?
Journey in the Mystery number 91, Sandu, Master of the Supernatural. We have Stan and Larry writing. We have Joe Sino on art this time, doing the art and inks. That is a nice change.
That's a nice
He
change.
does a good
I
Thor.
enjoy Joe Sino's art.
And
We got
Terry
Jack Kirby and
Zenix.
Dick Ayers on the cover.
Thor.
Yes, Terry Senix is on letters, thanks Dan. And we've got a release date of February 1963 and a 13-page story, which we're going to let the lovely Dan take this time.
Okay.
And we've also, for me, have started to develop a severe negative Pavlovian
Really?
response
Why?
to seeing Larry Lieber's name in the credits.
No, seriously, why?
He's been, and I don't think this is entirely Larry's fault because Stan's still coming up with the ideas and dumping them on Larry, but he's getting tasked with a lot of these, like, kind of bad fillery issues. Like, the stuff that really seems like it's going to be good, Stan takes himself, and if it seems like it's going to suck, he
This is
foists
coming
it
from the
off on
person that
Larry.
enjoyed this issue, too.
Okay.
I enjoyed this issue relatively, but I mean,
Well,
it's
we're about to
still not
find
a
out.
classic Thor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll. Sandu, master of the supernatural. Our story opens with Odin in Asgard, remarking that he is storing Thor's belt of strength, which increases his already incredible strength for a time when Thor will need it. Okay, that's helpful. At that very moment...
In the comic, they actually give a note justifying that that's a real thing from Norse mythology, so that if anyone complains about it, they can be like, no, Thor really had it.
I have no
I haven't
idea.
bothered to look
My
up if
knowledge
that's
of
true or
Norse
not.
mythology is limited to Thor.
Yeah, pretty much same here. I intended to check if that was something they had just made up for the comic or not, but then I completely forgot until right now.
We'll just have to continue on after Bill's disappointed us, by not doing his homework.
Oh yeah, Bill's the disappointment in the script.
Anyway, at that... Go ahead. No?
I mean, it is... Fuck, they're going to make me say this. Megan Joro, which literally translates to magic belt, and it doubles Thor's already prodigious strength. So it is actually a real thing from
that is actually
Norse
very cool.
mythology. They weren't making that up.
Okay, now we know that it is real. Because I know Mjolnir, Mew, whatever the fuck it's called, is real too.
Mjolnir, you had it right the first
in
time.
mythology. Okay, and it cures cancer. Anyway.
Yes.
At that very moment, Thor is flying through the air over New York City when he happens upon a building that is miraculously floating in the air and then suddenly disappears. Realizing there is nothing more he can do as Thor, the Thunder God transforms back into Donald Blake. Walks among...
Possibly the best
among
panel
the crowd.
in the entire order.
Sorry,
so
don't
far.
you interrupt me, young man.
It's...
That's my shtick. That's my shtick.
I'll interrupt whoever I want. You wanted to narrate something.
That's
Now you
entirely
get stuck with the crap you put us
Except
through.
Ryan's being incredibly restrained, which is shocking me. Anyway, Donald walks among the crowd and is shocked to find that all those who were in the bank before it disappeared suddenly appear in the street, and hears, to his astonishment, that everyone present has lost all recollection of the disappearing building. This is like a fucking Doctor Who episode. Leaving the scene, Blake can only conclude that Loki is once more using his magic to menace the people of Earth. That's a fair assumption. Okay. Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it's a completely
Changing back into Thor
reasonable
once
decision.
more, the god of thunder contacts Odin and learns that Loki is still confined to Asgard, and to the All-Father's better knowledge, not up to anything. The mystery thickens. This proves to be far from the truth, as when at a local racetrack, the winnings suddenly fly away. This spectacle is witnessed from Asgard by Loki, who intimates that he is involved with those strange going-ons. As it turns out, a few days earlier, while spying on Thor in his human guise of Donald Blake, Loki is inspired to launch a new scheme when Blake has taken Jane Foster to the carnival where Sandu the Mystic, a renowned mind reader, was performing. The trickster god then would use his magics to increase Sandu's mental powers 1,000-fold, and the mind reader, upon learning of his increased powers, would begin to use them to amass greater and greater wealth. They stole this from fucking Batman.
I suspect that Loki might have... They might have. I suspect Loki might have given him a little nudge in that direction, too, because he's like, wait, I have actual powers. I know, crime, and immediately steals everyone's wallets at the
Becoming
show.
even bolder, Sandu would begin stealing more buildings, transporting them to the moon for safekeeping. Right. Even going so far as to stealing an eastern palace. He next sets his sights on stealing the entire island of Manhattan and easily defeats the Air Force before taking his first target from the city. The UN, this is a freaking Batman episode. The UN building and raising it high in the air. Hearing of the incident, Donald Blake stumbles out of his office because he needs a cane, right? and changes into Thor to confront Sandu. While high above the city, Sandu demands that all the UN delegates turn over rule of the entire planet to him. They don't have that kind of fucking authority.
I think they actually literally say that in the comic too. They're like, we can't do that.
I don't care.
We're just representatives of our
Thor
government.
intervenes
He's like, I don't care.
and is attacked by Sandu, who bombards Thor with steel girders and traps the Thunder God under a building. Wow.
I'd read that.
Odin, witnessing the battle from Asgard, sends the Valkyries. Ooh, come on, Tessa. Oh, that's no fun.
Not that one. These are not very
that sucks.
Norse accurate
Sends
Valkyries.
not very Norse accurate Valkyries to help Thor out by bringing him his strength increasing belt. It's got a little WWF written on the front of it or something. Oh yeah, I'm so powerful. Okay, which gives the Thunder God the power to.
It is odd that they
That's
fight
a
over
valid
belts when
point.
they don't wear pants.
This isn't the
Now
wrestling
Ryan hates me
podcast.
too.
Yeah. Which gives the Thunder God the power to break free and resume his battle against Sandu. Excuse me. When he fails to strike Sandu with his hammer, the Mystic attempts to lift Thor's hammer and teleports into another dimension to attempt to do so. Unable to lift the hammer physically, Sandu attempts to lift the hammer with his mind, but again finds he's unable to do so, and the resulting surge of mental energy causes feedback that short-circuits his powers, shunting him back to the Earth dimension. Convenient. With his powers destroyed, all that Sandu has stolen is returned to the rightful places. Well, anybody who was standing in, the ruins of these missing buildings is now paste. Okay. Thor turns him over to the police.
Yeah, we don't talk
while
about
on
that.
Asgard, Loki curses Thor for foiling yet another of his plans. Wow. Go ahead.
This comic also had one of the darkest scenes I've seen in a comic at this era, because they had a point where Sandu's stealing a bank, and the police confront him and pull their guns on him and try to shoot him, but he just stops their bullets with their minds like he's Neo in the Matrix. And then he takes their guns and points them at their own face and threatens to shoot them. Yeah, he's just doing it with his mind, which is pretty intense.
You're absolutely
for a
right. That is
1963
actually
comic.
pretty freaking intense for a comic of this era. Right, because that's a genuine threat. Huh. So, Ryan, any opinions on this?
I didn't really like this
golden-
story.
Why not?
I don't know. It was too fucking corny for me or something. I gave this 1 star.
I gave it 3. I thought it was.
I
mean,
know.
it's campy
I
as all
don't.
hell, but it's
I don't mix with
1963. You're gonna
campy
get
well all the
camp.
time, though. So that's just not
Which
for
is-
me.
No, that's entirely fair. I have to say,
Eh.
just from reading this alone, it's
Yeah.
not that bad. It's a bit different than we're probably getting, and it shows. I think this sort of is a precursor to things that came later, where mind reading, telepathy, telekinesis, things like that became kind of catchphrases within the Marvel Universe, with between Magneto and Professor X and Jean Grey, and all this stuff about teleportation and mind powers, all this stuff, right? Kind of feels like this was them going, hey, look at the things we can do.
Yeah. One thing I really liked was the way they used Loki in this, because they were able to get the readership popped that putting Loki in a comic would get them without overexposing him, because Loki is not the threat in this issue.
And Sandu would
Loki
not have
gives
been
Sandu
evil
the
if
power.
Loki hadn't done it.
And then he's just Yeah, he does. He meddles with Sandu, but
Or
then
another
it's not
Thor
just
fights
another
commies.
Thor fights Loki story. Loki is in Asgard. Yeah, Loki is in Asgard for the entire time and never really interacts. He just sets things in
I think
motion
that's my issue,
and
though.
then sits back
I'd
and
rather have
watches
just
what
had
happens.
Loki face Thor again, even though it's over. It's using him too much because it kind of just buried.
Well, just wait
I
till
know
next
he is.
issue. I think he's the enemy
I
literally
just
in the
think it
next
buries
Thor.
Sandu. Sandu's not interesting at all.
Okay. There are two things about it that I do like. I do like the fact that it's not just Thor fighting more communists or generic bad, evil bad guy with a long Fu Manchu mustache
Or
Right.
aliens.
or aliens. No, this is you can argue that Asgardians are aliens.
I know, but he's not. He's fighting Sandu, though.
Yeah, but
technically.
he's fighting somebody who isn't intentionally evil. It's somebody who's driven to evil by being given too much power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Sandu would not have done this if Loki hadn't dumped this power on him. That's a kind of a little bit better stretch, of a theme for a story than you normally get out of Thor. This is kind of adding a little bit more dimension to it. And the second thing I like is the fact that they do Thor's mighty strength and such isn't the answer, isn't the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem, mention that?
Yeah, I was gonna talk. I was gonna talk up
Yes,
how good it was
exactly.
that Sandu
It's
gets
not
defeated
Thor
by his
using
own
his
hubris.
great godlike powers to beat him. It's Sandu just burning himself out.
I will say, if I read this again, I probably would give it at least a 2. I think.
Oh, now
I don't
his
know.
tune changes, Bill. What do you think?
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I still don't. I do feel bad giving. I have to shout out Joe Sano's art was really good, so I felt bad giving it a 1 at the time because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The one thing we'll ignore about
mean,
Snow's
there's
a
art
bit
is
much.
Sandu.
I
But,
mean, the story has a way too convenient ending. Right. There's a lot of stuff about it I don't like. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
a side
Another
effect
thing
of
about
being
this
13
is
pages. That
it
happens all
might-
the time.
it's hard to come to this after reading Amazing Spider-Man. I
No,
think that
it's
might have been my
really
issue.
not. It's not.
I think that must.
I think that was
it's
probably
not.
a bigger part of my issue.
Oh God, you're
Is
such
probably
a
that
fanboy.
fact.
Oh my God.
The writing on Spider-Man really is
Well,
a step
Truly.
above
these
anything
are
else that's going on at this
Spider-Man
time.
had the benefit of a continuing story. Yeah, and
Supporting
a supporting
cast is a
That's
big
one of the
deal
major things, and a supporting
for
cast.
why it's better.
Like that's usually the measure of when a book gets good
I'm
is
wi-
when they finally develop a supporting
Yeah,
cast. for
I'm
characters.
witnessing that.
And the
I'm
characters
witnessing
that
that
never
right now,
develop
slowly
one
with Iron Man,
don't last long.
and it got better right away.
Yeah, they add Happy and
Yeah.
Pepper, and all of a sudden Iron Man is
That
vastly
I haven't read
better.
an issue since they got added, but that issue was really good, just because they added some supporting cast.
Yeah.
Because they need something to do when they're not being superheroes to make the stories feel like they're
Yeah.
part of a world
well,
instead
I
of
mean,
just a little
The
vignette.
fact that the gods are playing games on our planet is also a nice little touch. Right. We're just pawns between Thor and Loki, fighting with each other. Right. So that's kind of cool too. Much better than that Spider-Man crap.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is... Well, I was going to agree with you, but now I'm not. The story was terrible. No, what I was going to say before Dan made me get ordinary, I think this is
I think so
possibly the
too.
best Thor story
I
we've
do.
read so far.
I know. I like that they've dropped in a lot of things. Like you say, the fact that what you see is gods playing games on our planet, and we are just victims of their hubris. What we see is Thor unable to defeat somebody. This person defeats himself. Thor isn't the hero here. Right?
Yeah, Thor
Yeah,
gets
you know.
soundly outsmarted by Sandu. Even when he gets the belt of extra strength, it lets him escape. But then Sandu's like, here, throw your hammer at me. And Thor does, and it turns out it was an illusion. Sandu was somewhere else. And then the hammer just, like, lands on the ground. Sandu's like, haha, I'll teleport this to another dimension. Thor's like, well, shit. And it's only that Sandu burns out his mental powers trying to pick up Mjolnir that the hammer returns to Thor
like
before
the
he reverts
villain
to Don
defeating
Blake.
himself. So this is a little. I mean, I'm sure there were other moments where villains defeated themselves, but this is kind of a. Yeah, this is kind of a step forward.
Not much in this era. This was an era very much about people looking heroic, and the fact that Thor really was almost a bystander in this whole story. And yet it didn't feel like pointless, because a lot of times when the hero's the bystander in the story, you're like, why did I read this? And the story still drove forward enough by Thor's actions to keep it interesting.
Why did I read this?
Yeah.
Speaking of, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome, by the way, Bill, because I'm going to put myself through this. We have, I guess, is there anything else to say about Journey before we move on?
It's not as horrible as you made it sound.
We can draw out our misery a little bit, it's okay. I prefer both Loki's stories, personally, to that Sandu story that we'd read so far, but oh well. I guess I'll stop putting it off, though, and we'll talk about Strange Tales number 108, the A story here. We got The Painter of 1,000 Perils. February 1963 release, 13 pages long. Terry Sisnick's on letters here. We got Dick Ayers on inks, Jack Kirby, the main artist, and Robert Bernstein is co-writing with Stan. So that probably explains some of the problems here.
Yeah, this is another case of Stan passing off one of the lesser stories to someone else in the bullpen.
If I skip through a lot of stuff in this, it's because I want to get through this one.
There's not a lot of story in this one.
We have a good cover, at least.
It felt very padded.
This cover
out
is
for
brilliant, and that's the best part of the issue.
Oh yes, this cover is great.
We have an opening page where we see the painter has drawn. I can't speak tonight. Fuck. I work today. Warning. Johnny Storm is trapped in a room on his painting, surrounded by the rest of the Fantastic Four that are gonna kill him. It's an asbestos line cell, I should mention. That's why Johnny can't escape, because, you know, asbestos has always worked on Johnny.
Until he gets hot enough to burn through it, which I think they've already done at this point.
Like 3 of his series when the Wizard debuted. So we open up here. Johnny's helping take care of some criminals. He makes the asphalt hot, bubbling like lava, so they say, and stops some criminal activity. As they try to rob a museum, it looks like. I'm not gonna bother reading because it's not worth it. We get a recap of some past crime he has solved with taking on the Wizard, and the Destroyer also took a whack at him. Spot Pete, and even Simu.
Yeah, we're 3.5 pages into this 13-page story, and it's all been filler.
So
nothing has happened that's advanced the plot. That's why I say, even though this is a short story, it is super padded. They really had about 5-6 pages of story.
So we see after that we have the painter, and he has these magic paints that he found that he can fucking paint anything that comes to life. Whoa. So we see him playing around with it. I'm not giving any details because fuck this story.
I did like the bit where where one of the random gangsters was going to shoot him, and so he turned the guy's gun into an anti-aircraft cannon, and then you just see it falling through like 9 floors of the apartment building they were in because it's so
And
heavy.
we get a flashback from his point of view of how the Human Torch stopped him and his fellow thugs before, and we see Human Torch using the Rain of Fire to capture them for a bit, blah, blah, blah. He gives the backstory and how he got... Oh, yes?
He, you're glossing a little too fine there. I think some more details needed. The painter was originally a counterfeiter, and he got caught because he didn't pay attention, made mistakes in his counterfeits.
How he was caught counterfeiting money and everything before. And he has an issue with details that comes back to bite him again. That's why we set it up here. Why I don't need any suspense for this shitty story. We have...
No, but it's the only thing that makes the narrative...
Oh yeah,
an actual narrative is the fact
it's
that
important
they've set
if you
this
want
point
to tell the story. So we get the backstory, and we get the story from the painter of how he found these magic paints. He found them in a cave that he was examining a mural that was an old, seemingly done by aliens, I think they mentioned, and he was caved in, and then he found
the
these
paints were from
paints,
aliens,
and he used them to help him escape. He painted himself making it out of the cave-in, and it worked. So, yeah, he finishes telling the story to his fellow thugs as they get off the flying carpet that he had painted earlier that I didn't mention. And then we see Johnny listens in on a radio fucking bulletin or announcement, whatever you want to call it. And we see him sit past some... water mains, and we see the painter has drawn a picture where he is sprayed by water, and it happens. So then we see the painter paint some jewels and gems, and they fall out of the painting, and the thugs now have them, but then they disappear because the painter wants to convince them to help him do more grandiose crimes. We then see creatures that the painter has created from an exhibit or something. It looks like so Johnny's taking them on, and the mechanical creatures. Okay, but we see the painter has painted a picture of Johnny getting infected. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't speak right now. Enveloped by sand. Enveloped by sand, which will extinguish his flame. Behind the scenes, a little bit about me. I have a speech impediment, and it's coming out right now. So we see Johnny's dealing with this. His flame's been extinguished. He makes his way. He makes his way out of it. Okay. Yeah, he makes the sand... I was confused.
The painter just makes the sand disappear.
He makes the sand disappear because he has a grander plan. As we see, the next morning, the painter has painted his grand masterpiece of Johnny trapped in the asbestos-lined room, as the rest of the Fantastic Four are drawn to kill Johnny, as Invisible Girl, I should say, at this point, is coming at him. Invisible Finn has a safe in his hands. He's gonna throw at Johnny, and Reed has a spear. And so this goes down. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna finish you, Johnny." He's like, "Oh, but you're my partners." And they throw a grenade at Johnny. There's an explosion. The painter thinks he's won, but this is where the details come back to bite him, because Johnny just fucking hops out of the goddamn painting.
Oh no, Johnny was never into painting.
Okay.
Johnny just shows up and burns everything.
He shows up and burns
crap.
everything. It looks like he's
Crap.
Well, I guess it looks like he's hopping into the painting, but he's just burning it up. So Human Torch is alive, and they're like, painter's like, "Oh, how is this impossible? I drew that he died, so he must be dead." So Johnny's like, "Ha, joke's on you. I learned how your paints work, and I used them. I used them to create my I used them to create my duplicate."
He created a duplicate of himself with the paint, despite the fact that they've already established he has the ability to just make duplicates of himself on his own.
Yeah, he made a duplicate to take his place to die, and he, the painter asked how he figured that out, and Johnny was like, "Oh, they had one thing in common, which reminded me of your carelessness." He's like, "Just as you forged careless copies of famed portraits and carelessly left out Lincoln's lawn sideburns on a counterfeit fiver, the giant hydrants you painted had no nozzles. Your beach lacked litter baskets, and even the Fantastic Four had no number 4 on their costumes, which is a pretty big oversight. All a result of your carelessness." So that's how Johnny figured out it was this guy, the painter fan file, how he was behind everything because of the lack of details. And then the end, as the painter is captured. Thanks for coming. This was, yeah, you
story
stole
was
the words right
absolute
from my
dog shit.
goddamn mouth. This was a 1-star comic all the way.
Yeah, 1 star for me too. I hated this. It's 13
yeah.
pages,
Yeah,
and
this
it's
was-
like
I'm with you on
30.
this one.
This felt
It's
this
50% padding at least. Like, they retell Johnny's escapades in the past. They do a whole established vignette of the painter getting captured that's like 2 pages long by Johnny the first time, where Johnny had disguised himself as a storekeeper to trap him with his counterfeit bills. That's completely pointless. You could just have like a speech balloon where he's like, "Oh yes, I was a counterfeiter who was captured by the Human Torch, and that's why I want to get back at him."
This
But they
felt
gave us
almost as
2
long as
pages
the
because they
Fantastic
didn't have
Four
enough
annual.
story.
This guy's like just a low end villain, right? He makes Paste Pot Pete look like like just
Yeah,
the best villain ever.
Well, he is, first of all, but second of all, yes, the painter is definitely the Brooklyn Brawler of Marvel villains.
Right? He's just sure.
I know where
You
you're
want
going,
some bad
so
news?
it is not. He appears next
This
in Web
is
of
not the
Spider-Man number
painter's only
74.
appearance.
Okay.
You'll love this, Dan.
Oh, goody.
He comes back in Web
Yeah,
of Spider-Man.
he becomes
Jesus.
a Spider-Man villain.
Why don't you just swing
But
by
you-
tomorrow morning and pee in my cornflakes or something? Okay.
Well, it's okay, Dan, because you're not going to see that till the late 80s / early 90s, so
By which point I'll be dead anyway, and you'll be doing this podcast
Probably.
with someone else.
I don't know how you're still going, honestly. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
He lives out of
That's
spite.
right.
He'll
I'm
live us all.
living just to piss Jim off. Anyways. Anyway, let's not go
What is it?
there.
What an inside joke that nobody listening to this
Nobody
is
will
going to
ever
understand,
get.
probably.
But yep, hopefully not.
So, so yeah, okay. There was no other first appearances important there. The one that was important isn't actually important. So, moving on to the D story, which Bill's gonna quickly explain because I haven't read it.
Oh,
We have Ray Holloway is a letter in though, so like that's important here. Steve Ditko art. I miss Steve Ditko art. Yeah.
Yeah. The Ditko art was actually pretty good on this. But, yeah, this one's not on Marvel Unlimited. And over the 4 years since I read it the first time, the black arts have lost it. Actually, I think I might have read it at the comic shop we used to work at, just in like a random
Yeah, that's what you
comic
said you
that my
did.
boss had in a bin and I found
Yeah,
one
that's
day.
what you said before.
I'm pretty sure that's how I got it the first time.
oh,
It doesn't seem to be online
what's it
anywhere.
called? The
But that's okay because
Silent
The Iron
Giant.
Warrior.
Strange
Oh, the
Tales
Iron
108,
Warrior.
it's the D story.
It's 5 pages long. It's not that important. That's why
Yeah,
I was just
I'm
gonna
more-
let Bill slowly, just quickly explain it.
Oh, I'm looking,
Yeah, most of the
looking
scans
at the
cut out
synopsis
after the
now.
Human
It's
Torch story.
like 6 sentences.
Yeah, basically, yeah, it's not a big story. It's back in the era of King Arthur's court, and he gets this blustery knight in his castle, starts talking shit to Merlin about how Merlin is completely useless because he's a feeble old man and he's not good at magic or at fighting. And Merlin's like, "Oh yeah? Show up tomorrow and we'll have a duel and we'll see who's better." And so the knight shows up the next day and there's this big black armored knight standing with Merlin. And so they have the duel between this arrogant guy and the Black Knight.
Scratch.
And the Black Knight kicks the shit out of him. And he's like, all right, your guy may have beat me, but I'm still better than you. You had to go find some actual fighter to beat me. You couldn't do it yourself. And Merlin just kind of smirks at him and taps on the armor, and it just falls apart because it was an empty suit of armor. And the only reason we had to read this is because this is Merlin's inspiration for Sir Percy of Scania.
A sirloin of steak?
Not exactly, Dan. Can we mute
yeah, I
other
actually
people?
can, but well, I'll be nice.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, this story, it's another one.
You know, I feel like I just read that through you, so I'm
was
just
the
gonna give it
Ditko
1 star and say I read it, so I don't have to see it pop up on my side view again. So,
No,
yeah.
I don't think that's right. Do you, Bill?
Hmm?
I think
What?
we need to make Ryan read it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I have marked off stuff that I
Okay,
have been
well,
unable to
first-
find just to get rid of it as well.
Cheaters will cheat.
Well, on to something good as we talk about Amazing Spider-Man number 2, the A story.
Oh, fucking joy.
Duel to the Death with Dan. Sorry, the actual title is called Duel to the Death with the Vulture. I get the two confused sometimes.
Please, my sides.
The Vulture's younger.
Yeah, I'm sure that they probably can't take much more, I'm sure. We got Stan Lee and Steve Ditko once more. Cover is apparently fully done by Jack Kirby this time, which actually adds up since Spider-Man's not all twisted up all the hell.
It's a great cover,
It is.
too. It's Spider-Man
I
pulling
guess
feathers
before I
out
go
of
any
Vulture's
further with
wings.
the credits here, I do have to say it is a little bit of a treat to see Jack Kirby do some Spider-Man every so often. It's cool to see. I'm glad Steve Ditko was the regular artist, but it is cool to see Jack Kirby do it every so often, in terms of covers and stuff.
Now,
And-
according to this, the cover was done by Steve Ditko.
You know, looking at the...
Is it?
Yeah.
So these credits are
Yeah,
lying
this is
then.
totally a Ditko
I
Spider-Man.
just assume.
Yeah. Yeah, it says Kirby in there, but just looking at the actual
I'm not
art
really
on the
looking.
cover,
I just
that is a
completely went
Ditko
off the
Spider-Man.
lack of twistiness to the character. I guess that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Kirby does less
that
webbing
Vulture
on the
looks
mask.
very Steve Ditko.
That really detailed, that very detailed.
I don't know if
webbing
maybe
is-
he did a part of it or why they'd be giving him a credit here, but I don't know. It might be just a mistake. Well, let's
I'm
take
guessing
back
it was
my.
just a mistake. Because in this era, often
Yeah.
the covers aren't credited, and so it's always a little bit of guesswork for sites trying to identify
It
who
looks.
actually
I mean,
did
if you
them, and
just
I'm
look
guessing
at
they
it
just got
like,
the
if you
information
just
wrong.
glance at it like I did, you could be convinced that it's Kirby. But if you do take a closer look, you can tell it's at least mostly a Steve Ditko project here. Saying.
The
yeah,
Vulture would also
that's
have a
where I-
wider jaw if it was
No,
Kirby.
it doesn't.
Kirby doesn't do narrow male
I mean, I'll take
faces.
back the comments in regards to this issue, but the general consensus, it still is a nice treat when Kirby does do Little Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, it's fun to get Kirby.
Yeah,
Spider-Man
I'm definitely glad
once in a while, but,
that Steve Ditko
this
is
isn't
the
one.
regular artist, though. I think I just got a... Oh, Marvel Completionist Bronze level. I think that's new. I don't think I had that before.
Yeah, you probably just tipped
Yeah,
over
apparently.
50 by marking off that
So we
Iron Warrior
have
story.
February 1963 release, and this first story is 14 pages. And as if you couldn't tell by the name of the story, this is the first appearance of the Vulture. who we won't see again until issue 7, but this is a really good first appearance for him. We're gonna do what we did earlier.
Vulture's actually probably the most entertaining early Spider-Man villain.
Sandman's really good.
It takes a bit for Doc Ock. Sandman's good.
Vulture
but he's
might be
like
better.
Once or twice off in Spider-Man. Vulture, they do a lot of interesting stuff with before they start really bringing Doc Ock to the forefront as like Spider-Man's main villain.
Well, okay, I guess what you're getting at is in terms of people used more, Vulture's used more consistently here. Yeah.
Not only used more, but they do interesting stuff with him because they have a couple of Vultures fighting over the mantle.
Sandman kind of flips between Human Torch and Spider-Man some, and then Doc Ock isn't used consistently at first. So Doc Ock.
And his first couple of appearances, he's just mad scientist villain of the week. I mean, he's always great when he shows up, but it's probably 20 or 30 issues
Doc
in
Ock,
when
we
he
all
starts
know and
really
love
becoming
and can agree that he's
his
the
own
best
person
Spider-Man
instead
villain.
of... Yeah.
Really? Nothing?
Yeah.
Silence?
What?
But
that
I
was
mean,
your cue.
I'm not. I have nothing to add to this travesty that you guys are perpetuating on our poor listeners.
Just for a little insight, that was the part where Dan was supposed to speak up and spew the righteous word of Green Goblin. But I don't know what happened there. Yeah.
then we could all laugh at him for being
the
wrong.
first time, yeah.
Brightburn anyway, whatever.
Shut up.
We speaking of, if you haven't watched or listened to our last, if you ever listened to our last Crew 616 Chew-On episode on Brightburn,
Righteous little pricks.
you should go and listen to that one, and 30 Days of Night as well if you wanna as well, because they were both good episodes.
You got you people. Batman.
And next we will be doing next time we do a Crew 616, we will be discussing the entirety of Batman's cinematic presentations, in which Dan will continue his display of awesome taste by trying to tell us on George Clooney being
Not
the best
necessarily, but
might be a little bit of false advertisement, but.
And it's been great being on here. I'm sorry I will not be able to be back because Dan is going to kill me.
This wasn't supposed
my mind.
This wasn't supposed to become the plug portion of the podcast, but I had to make.
No, you know what?
Dan.
Plug it because it is going to be a fun conversation when we get into it.
We're gonna plug it more at the end too. We'll come back to that. But as I was gonna say before, we're gonna do the gimmick we did earlier. I'm gonna take the A story. We'll give Bill the B story, which is actually perfect here because Bill has more insight with the B story than I would talking about it. So we're gonna dive in. Great cover. We've talked about it. They do display on the cover that Spider-Man is also trapped by the Terrible Tinkerer. That we'll get to that in the B story. But we open up. That was
I like
nice.
that they put both covers.
We get a
both
lovely
stories on the
opening
cover
page
this
with
month.
the Vulture and Spider-Man midair, looking like they're looking like they're duking it out a little bit.
Nice
so that
big
was pretty
splash
cool.
page.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, this is some of Ditko's best work because the first real panel is a guy walking down the street with a briefcase of money and a giant vulture shadow over him.
We see a crowd. Bill just said we see Vulture with the briefcase, and he's got a fortune in bonds, and the teller needs some help capturing.
Ding, ding, ding,
The guy who's got this briefcase stolen, I should say. But we see a crowd. He's like, "Whoa, I've read about him, but I never expect to see him." He's like, "I didn't believe it. I thought he didn't exist." So the Vulture's become a bit of a local urban legend, I guess. We go to the executive suite of the powerful Jameson Publications, where Mr. J. Jonah Jameson is on his usual rampage. He's talking about how he wants to devote the next entire issue of a Now magazine to the Vulture. So we do see this is Now Magazine headquarters too. So this is where the Now comes up, I guess. So
Yeah. I want to devote the next entire issue of Now Magazine to the Vulture. He's big news. Everyone
Yes.
wants to read about him. But keep printing stories about Spider-Man
And we-
also.
we-
I'll never rest till I get that dangerous menace. He can't let go of
for a great
Spider-Man.
detail too, in the next
even
panel we see
for
him
an
hold up an
instant.
issue of Now Magazine with Spider-Man on the cover that says Menace underneath. It's pretty good detail. The photographer comes saying, no, Jameson's like, is this the only photo we have of the Vulture? What am I paying you for? Blah, blah, blah. And the photographer's like, oh, nobody can capture him, sir. Blah, blah. So then we see Peter in school doing some science shit, and he gets made fun of because he's a little nerd. And,
Now, this is a notable moment, too.
Yes.
Because the redheaded kid that's making fun
Is
of
it
him
Archie?
doesn't have the name yet in this issue. They call him
I have
Moose.
to correct that a bit. He is called
But it
Flash
is
in
Flash
Amazing Fantasy
Thompson.
15, but he's then called Moose here, and then he's called Flash again next time we see him. Yeah, no,
I forgot
I
Flash was in
remembered that,
Amazing
and then I
Fantasy.
confirmed it
That's
when I
my
looked
bad.
at the appearances here. Because it's a fun little character switch up here.
Yeah, I think this is the first time Flash actually does anything.
It might be. He might have just been like one panel in the Amazing Fantasy 15 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was just a
but
kid
he
in the
definitely had the
classroom
scene
in
like
Amazing
red curly
Fantasy.
hair and everything when he appeared before. That's the distinguishing thing. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
it's the
I mean,
mark
it's
how you can
definitely
tell it's
him. Yeah, it was definitely him, but
So
I don't
yeah,
think
Peter's
he
like
did
very
anything
funny,
before now.
Moose. After he's called a bookworm and stuff, and he's like, at least my brain isn't muscle bound like that fat head of yours. That's pretty mean, little Parker boy. Anyways, I'm gonna make Dan sound great. So we see Peter looking at the Now magazine, but he's like, the teacher's like, Parker, I didn't expect you to ignore a delicate experiment, because he started ignoring what's in his beaker. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Pretty
reading
fun
the Now
panel.
magazine while his beaker's
School
exploding
ends, we
behind
see him
him.
get home, Aunt May's there. Peter has an idea. He gets the camera from Aunt May, and Peter wants to try to capture photos of the Vulture to help pay bills for Aunt May and for towards the house and everything. So he's got his camera and he's ready to test it out. And we see the Vulture preparing on the outskirts of town. He flies from a silo, which I guess is his base is a silo, and then we see Spider-Man has a strange sensation, which is called the spider sense, as we see the Vulture fly by him, and Vulture throws a rock. No, it's just some. Oh yeah, it is a rock wrapped with paper that has a note on it that says, "I shall steal the diamond shipment from under your noses." So pretty nice of him to warn them. He starts gloating. He's like, "I did it. My triumph shall be even greater after I've seized the gem." There's the special gem that's coming through town tomorrow or whatever.
This is a great panel, too, of Peter in the background trying desperately to swing with one hand and hold up the camera to his eye with the other to
Steve
take a
Ditko
picture
is
of the
really
Vulture.
good at some of the small details in these comics.
Yeah, this is some of my favorite
So
Ditko
Spidey's
art
struggling
in
to
this
get a
issue.
photo. He finally gets everything adjusted perfectly, but fucking Vulture does a sweet ass swooping kick on him and knocks him the fuck out. So then
Some
fuck
maverick
that
shit going
pretty-
on there.
Yeah, fucking alpha male. Fucking Sigma. So Vulture flies Spider-Man up to a water tower and dumps him right the fuck in. And
You'd think Peter Parker was a tourist
LA.
from Vancouver and
Oh
Seattle.
my god, what a
Or,
reference.
not Seattle, Los Angeles. Yeah.
holy shit.
That's what I was thinking when I reread this, and he's throwing
Where's
Peter
the elevator
head
footage?
first
Oh
into
my
this
god.
fucking water tower.
So Peter wakes up because of the sudden jolt being thrown into the fucking water. So he's like, oh, the vultures trapped me inside this water tank somehow. He's like, I've only got myself to blame for being so careless. That is correct. He's like, I'll just shoot my web towards the top. And he's like, oh no, the ejector's empty. So we then see him struggle on the climb because it's too wet, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, there's no pleasant choice here. He's like, oh, they're drowning or suffocating here. He's like, wait a minute, what's wrong with me? He dives down to the bottom of the water tower. He prepares himself, and he leaps right out of the water tower. Good to know that you could have just done that the whole time.
I mean, he's got
Yeah.
super strength, and this has thin aluminum
Yeah.
sides.
He could have
He
done
could
that
have
too.
punched his way out.
Yeah. This is. That's true.
He did literally punch out the
he
thing
gets out
last
of
issue.
the water tower and he picks up his camo, which thankfully didn't get hurt in all this. And we see him later that day, where he sees that his pictures came out fine, and he's gonna go sell them to Jameson. The publisher of Now Magazine hates Spider-Man. He thinks to himself. This is the issue where it's heavily pounded that it's Now Magazine, but then they switch back and forth, and then he's both, and then they drop Now. He's like, oh, originally I had signed a Spider-Man costume just to give me some color so I can make money as an entertainer. He's like, but if I'm really gonna start to be a secret adventurer, I've got to make some changes. He's like, I'll add an extra web fluid capsule, which is pretty useful. So he does just that, and then we...
I like that they
Yeah.
gave him an excuse for only having what was on his wrists, too, to begin with. Like, he's not just an idiot that didn't do it. He was never planning to need to web a lot
No, well,
because
yeah,
he just used it when he was
he wasn't
on a
planning
show.
to be a hero. He just wanted to be a carny and make some money. So, I mean, who doesn't, right? So, we see Peter in a crowd with as an area has been cordoned off, and there's police and news helicopters and TV cameras, and as they prepare, we have the armored fan here that has the fucking diamond that the Vulture is threatened to steal, and he does just that as he pops out of the sewer grate and snatches the goddamn briefcase with the diamond in it and flies through the sewers with it and goes through the subway with it, and we see Peter change into Spider-Man chase him down, which he actually does with help with his spider sense, and he starts following the Vulture. But Vulture's trying to outsmart him, and he flies behind him, and he's like, he does outsmart him a bit again. He's like, he gets behind Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's like, holy smoke, where'd he go? And Vulture comes and attacks Spider-Man, knocks the camera out of his hand, but thankfully Spider-Man catches it so he can still take some pictures. He grabs it with his web. He does. He's
got a wrist strap on the camera this time.
his IQ is
They
ever
show it in the
expanded.
panel where he's hanging off the Vulture's foot.
So he's like, you fool, and the sky is my element. From here, I'll be rid of you for good. And Spider-Man then tests out his new little gadget that he created, and we see that the Vulture's out of control, because he can't stay near now. And Vulture's like, oh, you'll kill us both. And Spider-Man's like, speak for yourself. Not very hero-like. The sky is my element as much as yours. Just watch. He's like, I can always save myself by shooting web at a nearby building like this. So he saves himself, and we still see the Vulture tail spinning out of control. But thankfully, he's spinning slowly enough that he goes to the ground without actually getting hurt. So Spider-Man didn't, save the Vulture from getting hurt, but thankfully he didn't get hurt. So we see Spider-Man taking some more pictures, blah, blah. Then we go to the next day where Peter finally sells his first pictures. In issue number 2, I have to point out, he sells his first pictures to J. Jonah Jameson. And no, he actually gives...
And Jonah isn't cheap yet.
He gives Peter a premium
'Cause he
here,
paid
enough
Peter
that
a shitload of money
Peter
for those
literally
pictures.
mentions at the end of this issue that he has paid their rent for a whole year going forward, and has had extra money to buy extra stuff after that, and still has some left over.
Yeah, they're both holding wads of
He's paid an entire year's
cash
rent. He
after he's
said he was
paid an
buying some other
entire
stuff
year's
for or
rent.
whatever, and he's still got some left over. So fucking Jameson paid a goddamn premium. But Jameson did mention, I guess we should say, that he would give even more money for pictures of Spider-Man, and he did enjoy the pictures of Vulture or whatever, but he wants pictures of Spider-Man, so... Yeah. And there we are. That's a pretty cool... I wasn't expecting to see that happen so early in issue
we're losing
2
you
already. Didn't expect in issue 2 for already Peter to be selling pictures to Jameson. That's pretty cool. So I guess in terms of character importance stuff with this issue, Jameson's secretary next appears in the 1995 Untold Tales of Spider-Man number 12.
They shouldn't really be noted because they're unnamed.
And
usually unnamed characters don't get credit, but I think that slipped in because it's so early in this.
Of course, I already think I mentioned, appears next in issue number 7, so we can't wait. Good issue. I gave this one 4 stars. This is my favorite Spider-Man story so far, and it will remain for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, I gave this one 4 stars too.
It's crap.
You suck.
Of course you think that.
Oh,
you're just mad that you got your feathers plucked and are locked in jail.
Sure.
I mean, it's an old cranky bald man.
Fair.
What am I supposed to think?
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Uh-huh. Sure. Whatever.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids and their Spider-Man.
Yeah, perfect for you. Perfect for you.
Wow.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have to call back to your 60s somehow.
Yeah, you don't mess with Scooby-Doo. Do not mess with Scooby-Doo. Okay?
We should,
Oh.
No, the writers of Scooby Apocalypse
you're
did
so
not.
mean.
surprised that's what it took.
Oh, you're so mean. Oh, God, I hate Scrappy-Doo.
I liked that until they brought Scrappy-Doo in, and then it was just terrible. He's even worse than Scooby Apocalypse.
Yes, Scrappy-Doo is no excuse to live.
I think I made it through 2 issues once he was in the story and just dropped the book.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about Scrappy-Doo. Get on with this god-awful Spider-Man. Get it over with, please.
What? Well,
now,
I'll oblige you just because I've had a long enough day, and you're, I don't know, our friendship's in balance now. Beast Story of Amazing Spider-Man number 2. I'm going to let Bill take this one because Bill's definitely going to cover this one better than I will. We got Artie Simic letter in this one. This one's a 10-page story, and off we go to the races.
All right, this is
Terrible
the
Tinkerer.
uncanny threat of the terrible Tinkerer. Make the person,
Hey,
the
you
person
and me
who
both,
struggles
brother.
to pronounce TH sounds say it. And so anyway, this story opens with Peter in his science lab. Mr. Warren, the teacher, although he may possibly have not been named yet at this point, is introducing Peter to a famous scientist who's Professor Caldwell, who's looking for someone to help him with research over the weekend. And naturally, he recommends Peter. And Peter would be honored to assist him. But on the way over, he asks Peter to swing by the radio repair shop and pick up his radio for him. And he says he'd be grateful. Notably, Caldwell does not give Peter any money.
well, maybe he already
So I guess
paid
he's
for it.
just supposed to
These
pay
kids
for
have
it
got to
himself.
pay their dues somehow.
Yeah, meddling kids.
Yeah. But anyway, Peter agrees to do it, and so he heads off to the radio shop, which is called the Tinkerer Repair Shop, and He pops in, and the clerk there is just called the Tinkerer. And he says he's there to pick up a radio for Cobwell. And so he goes and gets the radio. And he goes down to this underground, like, steel blast door dungeon looking thing where he's got an alien working for him on repairing radios. And he's enhanced it, so it's much more than a simple radio. And the Tinkerer comments that so far no one has suspected what they have done to their radios while they were supposed to be repairing them. And anyway, he takes the radio, gives it to Peter, and then only charges him 10 cents for it being repaired, which I understand is cheap even by 1963 standards.
This plot could turn on a dime.
Anyway, so Peter goes to Cobwell's lab, and I hate you so much. And so Peter goes to Cobwell's lab and starts doing the experiment he was there to help with. But he keeps picking up weird electronic impulses coming from the radio.
That's right.
Similar
Spider-Man
to ones he was noticing in the Tinkerer's shop. And
At this point.
yeah, it is. And just then, Cobwell has to leave to go to a lecture. So he just leaves Peter in his lab to wait around for a couple hours before he can help with the experiment. So Peter decides to fuck around with the radio and see what's going on. And he opens it up, and the radio is full of weird electronic gizmos that aren't supposed to be in there. So he turns into Spider-Man and heads back to Tinkerer's shop to see what's going on.
Spider-Man?
He heads down to the basement.
Costume. Okay. Well,
He
turns into the Man of Spiders.
I figure Pendantic's the name of the game with Spider-Man.
I think you mean Superman.
Oh.
Or Peter Palmer.
Ow. Go ahead.
Oh, I made a joke about it,
Yeah,
but
we
it went
somehow
under,
missed
it
the
went
Peter
under the
Palmer,
radar.
I think.
No.
No, I got it, but I
No,
thought
it
it
was
was
the
a
B
different
story
issue.
of number
hadn't
one.
noticed
I
that it
knew
was
which
written as
one.
Peter Palmer in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then I did miss it. Because I planned on commenting it, but I completely missed it until I got here, and I'm like,
Yeah, no,
wait, they
just for
wrote
context,
Parker. Now I have to
we
just
didn't really
ignore
cover
that.
it earlier that well, but in the B story of issue number 1, they accidentally had the typo of Peter Palmer instead of Peter Parker. So they were playing around with stuff. Yeah, he's Peter
And it's
Palmer
not a
for that
one-off thing.
entire
He's
story,
Peter Palmer
so
for that entire story.
it'd be interesting to see if that one was written before the A story or what happened there. It might have just... They might have played around with changing his name. That might have been a full mess up.
Or if Stan outsourced
too.
to someone else to write it and then took credit for it. That's possible too. Anyway, so Spider-Man heads down into the basement and he finds the Tinkerer and all the aliens. And they've got spy gizmos hidden in important people's radios all over the city. And they're watching a military meeting with defense of the Eastern Seaboard being discussed, intending to steal the military and scientific secrets and then presumably sell them to an enemy force, which seems like an odd thing for aliens to be concerned with.
know.
But nevertheless, that's
What are
their
they?
plan. Yeah. And just then they realize that an alien comes back and sees Peter there and shoots at him with a ray gun, but of course he misses, but Peter dodges directly into the room, and everyone's like, oh shit, it's Spider-Man. And so Spider-Man starts jumping around in the room, dodging all the aliens, trying to grab him, throwing them around, until
like, it's
the
Spider-Man.
Tinkerer shoots him in the back with a ray gun, which would have killed any normal human, but it just stunned him. So they put him in a
Resisto
specimen
glass.
cage, and Peter's concerned until he noticed they gave him air holes. So he shoots his web fluid through the air hole. It hits the release button on the control panel, which lets him out of the cage. And he starts beating up the aliens who shoot at him with a ray gun and set all their equipment on fire. And so they book it out of there. And he starts fighting with the Tinkerer until the fire gets too bad and he has to bail out of there. But we don't see the Tinkerer anymore. The aliens get into a ship and fly away. And then Peter heads back to the laboratory of Dr. Caldwell, fixes the radio to make it seem completely normal, and then goes back to doing the experiment. They get to work, and Peter's pondering what it could mean, because when he was fighting with the Tinkerer, he ripped his mask off, revealing something underneath that's really mysterious and will not be explained for a long time. However, in key appearances from this story, recurring appearances from this, we have the Tinkerer, who returns in Amazing Spider-Man number 159. But we also have the head alien, who next appears in
Peter
Amazing
Parker
Spider-Man number
a
13.
predicament.
Because
we'll give a spoiler alert here if you don't want to be spoiled to this fucking 60-year-old comic, and don't look at Amazing Fantasy 13. But go ahead.
Yeah. And the reason the alien, who was never named or seemed terribly important, returned so soon, and why they were concerned with stealing military secrets for some other power rather than, say, planning an invasion or any of the things aliens typically do by this trope, is the aliens were actually old Mysterio and his goons in disguise.
Whoa.
Which is a retcon that's fairly pointless, but nevertheless, they do retcon the alien into being Mysterio. I think their original plan was that Tinkerer was
sucks.
also an alien, but once they decided the aliens were Mysterio, I don't actually know where they're going
Once
with
they
the fact
decided
that Tinkerer was wearing a
sucks.
mask.
There's a reason he doesn't come back till issue 159. Tinkerer fucking sucks. He's one of my anti-boys. I hate the Tinkerer. Fuck the Tinkerer. The best version of... I was indifferent, but...
I'm largely indifferent to him. But this is the only issue I've ever read with him, so he just feels like a random throwaway villain to me, and I'm going to hang on to that feeling as long as possible. Given
he doesn't
Ryan's
add any. It just
caustic
pissed me off. He
response to
doesn't
him.
add, and he's so shitty. He doesn't add, and he's not that, like he should be. He could be a threat, but he's just never a good threat, and he just becomes a.
Yeah, even in this issue, like, the aliens and Tinkerer are all just kind of bumbling idiots. Like, Spider-Man just, leaps around the room and easily outpaces them until they get a lucky shot on him. And then he immediately escapes, and they destroy their own hideout trying to shoot him. He becomes a lackey
for everybody, that he just creates shit for everybody, which is probably the best role for him at the point that the way he's written, but... Yeah, and
he doesn't. In this, he's a lackey to Mysterio.
I think the best I've ever seen the Tinkerer written
the
was
aliens
probably
giving the
in
orders.
Chip Zdarsky's Spectacular Spider-Man run, but it's Chip Zdarsky. He's a great writer. So
yeah, enough said. I mean, and as much as I kind of crap on this story, it was still a 3-star story for me. Like, I make fun of.
I gave this one 2. I didn't enjoy this one as much. This
it was still
my
good.
least favorite story so far. I'm in the wrong. You're more on the right than I am here for the terms of the average. I just think my Tinkerer hate definitely got in the way a little bit here, but it wasn't that good of a story in my opinion. So I wouldn't say I liked this one.
I wonder if when he comes back, they'll have even remembered that he was
I'm
wearing
very
a mask
intrigued
that
to
got
see
ripped
what
off,
that
or if
second
he's just going to be an old
appearance
man.
has in store. I have a feeling he's somehow... I don't know, because Amazing Spider-Man kind of pops off a little at that point, but at the same time,
It's like... Yeah, it's gonna be like 15 years in the future, so they've probably completely forgotten that
He could be a
Peter
lot
pulled
worse
his
or a
mask
lot
off,
better in that
and he'll
second
just be an old
appearance.
man.
It's going to be fun to see.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Dan?
Not really. It's
I shit on this. I shit on this, so you should be semi-happy.
This is the least consequential story he's had so far.
It doesn't feel like there's any point to the story. You know,
That's why I didn't like it.
But to be fair, this is not the only title that has had
There
this
really
problem.
isn't.
There was at least one Hulk entry that just had no point.
No.
You know, it's
At least.
yeah, at least. But you know what I mean? Like this story exists simply to fill pages.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to argue that. The only vaguely
Obviously, Professor
consequential
Cobble
thing out
appearance
of
as
it
he shows
is,
up in the 2014 run.
yeah, sadly that and Tinker and I can't even really credit Mysterio because Mysterio is totally a retcon.
They just realized
These
they
were
were shitty
originally
aliens, so they
I'm not.
changed them.
So, yeah, they're like, why would aliens be stealing secrets to sell to someone? That makes no sense. So they retconned it into being Mysterio. Because he doesn't mention it in issue 11 when he turns back up. Or issue 13 or whatever it is. He does. It's just later that they're like,
it was me all along.
I was the alien. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't even remember when they revealed that he was the alien.
I joked
such
about
a pointless retcon.
No,
Go ahead, Dan.
It actually works. It works better with the retcon in place.
Yeah.
It does.
Because it makes the
true.
motivations make sense. But I'll be honest.
No one would have thought about it.
If they had never retconned that and those were just aliens, I wouldn't
like
even
you say,
remember
I'm
they
not saying
existed,
this is
and
a
so it wouldn't
horrible
bother me at
story.
all.
I just don't. They had an opportunity to kind of delve into Peter Parker, and they don't.
This story means more.
Yeah, it just
More continuity. It doesn't mean anything right now, and even with more continuity, it's still a shitty little story.
Yeah, but
so
I mean, I
It's
wouldn't
not
go
that
that far.
shitty.
It's
I
fine.
just-
It's a good story. It's completely missable if you don't read it. You lose nothing.
It's fun.
But it's a well-written
fun, and
little
I like
story.
the Professor
It's fun
Cobble
for
and
what it
Peter
is.
stuff.
I've read it. Yeah, I've read it twice now, and I enjoyed it both times.
I joked about the
you
Professor
miss
Cobble
nothing if you don't
appearances in the
read it.
2014 run, but that's actually a fun little arc that happens where he makes a brief appearance. So.
Yeah, because he's completely pointless in this. His point here is to be a guy who has a radio that they've messed with.
He's pointless in
to
general,
tip
but he's
Peter
still a
off
fun
to the
little
fact
character that
something's
means
going
nothing.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have much more to say about this one? I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
That's really
don't
all
get
I
me
have.
wrong. I'm very happy Spider-Man's in the order. This was just, I still I didn't hate this story. I've made a lot of jokes and I've got angry about the Tinkerer, but I just, it was fine. It was a high 2 stars. It wasn't a low 2 stars. I just couldn't give it 3. I didn't like it. So, yeah,
and mine's a low
we're probably
3, so
really
we're probably
like
closer
only
than
if
it
we were
sounds
doing
with it being
decimal
a
points, we're
5-star
probably within 0.4 of
rating.
each other or something. Yeah, so there we go.
Easily, because mine's like a 2.7 probably.
So yeah, I guess on that note, we will we'll do some plugging here in a minute. But before we could do some plugging, we'll do some plugging for next week. But we have we have a lot of plugging to do, I suppose. But for next week, we will be covering Fantastic Four number 13, where the Red Ghost in his Indescribable Super Apes debut. This should be fun because Bill and I. Bill and I disagree on.
One of
I
us
like
the
that
Super
Fantastic
Apes.
Four gets our biggest biggest disagreements in terms of stories.
Get your hands
I
off
loved Impossible
my
Man.
comics, you damn dirty apes.
You
Yes.
So yeah, Red Ghost and his Indescribable Super Apes will be a fun talk next week. Like Bill said, one of us liked it, one of us didn't. One of us hated it, in fact. Tales to Astonish, number 42, The Voice of Doom. It's not Doctor Doom. It's it's a fun little story. It's certainly a thing we read. This is a little stretch of Ant-Man stories that are like not like blatantly terrible like Torch stories, but they're also like still not that good. Tales of
Ant-Man
Suspense, number 40. Finally, another Iron Man story. I say finally, it was only last issue he debuted. Last episode. We have Iron Man versus Gargantus in a story I rated too high, but it's a fun story till we meet the villain. Then we have A Journey into Mystery, number 92, The Day Loki Stole Thor's Magic Hammer, which is a fun little story. And then before the next one, we have Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos, issue number 1, is finally debuting next week, which will be fun. Bill hasn't read that yet, so...
I'm looking forward to that because the site we use has Sergeant Fury in a different category than the superhero stuff, even though it really should just be a flashback.
Yeah,
and so
like
Bill
just said, technically Sergeant Fury isn't in the order that we're following, but it technically is a 616 related series. It's in the 616 continuity technically, so we are adding it in.
Yeah, they just had a category of World War II. They just had the World War II order starting with this issue, where they put the stories set in World War II that were more war-orientated, instead of just keeping it in the 616 order and marking it as a flashback for reasons that I don't know, because I wasn't privy to the discussion, obviously. I'm just a user of the site. I'm not affiliated with any of the decision-making that goes on there. And so it's a point we kind of disagree on.
It doesn't to us make sense to leave Sergeant Fury out, because of course it gives us Nick Fury, and some of the other side characters actually end up being a little important too. But Nick Fury, of course.
And other characters from the Order show up in there, like relatively early on.
He's actually already been in an issue I
Reed
just read.
Shows up in it.
He was in the last issue I read, issue number 3. So yeah, he definitely, it's definitely important. Like this, it is definitely in 616 continuity, and it definitely should be included. It's important. It gives us more to work with.
Yeah, it from what I understand, it's good stories, but not consequential stories. Like nothing that really happens in it affects 616 continuity, because it's kind of a prequel. But that being said, we've got stories in here just because they mention Odin, so skipping Sergeant Fury is...
But then after Sergeant Fury, we're going to end the episode with Fantastic Four number 14, which brings back the Puppet Master, which should be fun.
So we're ending on a high note, and I'm not being sarcastic when I said that. I love this issue.
Yeah. I was... I
love this issue more
than
most people did. I'm a full star above the average.
I love Puppet Master, but I had some issues, some conflictions with this issue.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what I think of, because I remember you being fairly negative about this and me having a 4-star. So it'll be interesting to see what comes back. I remember that I loved it.
Both Fantastic
but I don't remember
Four
the
issues,
so
these 2 issues of Fantastic Four in a row, we disagree on a lot. We have really different ratings, so it should be interesting.
Yes, but I remember why I rated the Super Apes one.
Yeah, fair.
Because they're super-powered monkeys. What's not to love? Literally, that's the main point of my logic, is that I love super-powered apes.
I can't really argue with it, to be fair. That's pretty fair. I guess I viewed it as more than just that, though. So, that's probably also fair.
Yeah, and that's probably also fair. I was like, "There's monkeys and they have powers." This is a 4-star comic
But
right
anyways,
here. I don't
that is
even care
our
what
6
happens.
entries for next week. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Especially, I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued, first of all, for mine and Bill's debates slash discussions between the Fantastic Four issues. Um,
Yeah, really, it's down to 14 because, like I said, with 13, my argument is entirely
and then
Super
I'm
Apes.
very intrigued to see if Bill enjoys Sergeant Fury as much as I have, because Sergeant Fury has actually been one of the top highlights of the reading order so far, and it's not even in the proper order we're doing. It's just what we added in. So I'm very intrigued to see if Bill agrees with me, or maybe Bill will actually find that it's a piece of shit, which I would actually be a little surprised by, because I don't. It's not.
I have not heard a
Yeah,
single
so,
bad review.
should be
from
interesting.
Early Sergeant
Moving
Fury.
on a
so.
little bit, we jokingly plugged them earlier, but if you haven't checked out our Crew 616 Choose On episodes, you should check them out. We let our personalities. Our personalities have been coming out in this more as we go along, but our personalities really have been coming out in Crew 616 Chew On, because we get to poke a lot of fun at each other in our thoughts on these different movies so far, as we've just been covering movies so far. So these different movies it's been a lot of fun to have these discussions. We did 30 Days a Night for the first one, and last time we did Brightburn, and we've had a lot of fun so far. And next month, we talked about it earlier, but next month we're going to be covering all the theatrical releases of for Batman movies. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
More. We're going to really just talk about the actors who've played Batman.
Yeah, we're not
in the films.
We're not gonna we're not reviewing all the movies or anything. It's just it's a discussion.
Task.
That would be too long.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about the different adaptations of Batman and some of his side characters and some of his
the
villains
actors.
and stuff.
Yeah.
That type of
Yeah,
stuff.
who's the best Batman? Who's the worst? That sort of thing. Worst won't be a debate. Let's be honest. It's George Clooney.
This is gonna be so
and you've just been you got a good chunk of the conversation right there. So no.
No, I mean,
really.
I'm not really going to play my cards on this one until we get into the conversation, because
Oh yeah, no, we're not going to spoil it here.
I am a huge Batman fan. I genuinely am. I always have been, and I came away from all of these Batman movies with probably some takeaways that you guys wouldn't necessarily have because you're not as big a fan. And it was just, yeah.
Batman's always been amongst my favorite DC characters,
Batman
but I'm probably not as big a fan as you.
Like you say, I have some thoughts on the different actors over time who've played Batman, and not necessarily the actors, but just the film that they were in when they played Batman does have an impact on their performance. You know,
Yeah, I think George Clooney being the worst Batman isn't entirely George Clooney's fault. I'll just put that out there now.
I don't think he would have done that bad a job had he had a better script / production of that film. Right. But it was so campy. It did him no favors on any level. Right. There was no way he was going to play a good Batman.
Nobody any favors.
Well, I think. Well, the only one who came out of it looking halfway good was Schwarzenegger,
especially not the audience.
He just yucked it up so much that you couldn't take him seriously, but he wasn't taking himself seriously, right?
Yeah,
there you go.
And we'll leave you with that little preview before we get completely derailed.
But yes,
but that will be.
No, that's fair.
Bill,
I could hear it.
Bill,
that's why I'm like, I need to cut this off.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I do need to stop there, but do join us for that conversation. Tune in for that because it's going to be fun.
that will be happening next month in August. Right now, we're doing one each month. Some months, if we have the extra time, there might be an extra one, but right now we're sticking to one a month. So we'll see how things go. So come back in August. We will be teasing this in each episode of Route 616 until we get there, and we will tell you the episode before when it's happening, so you know.
Yep.
So stay tuned.
Anyways, all of that being said,
On that note, we will see you all later. I guess I should plug it where you can listen to this. In case you don't know fully, but if you're here on YouTube, then please leave a like, subscribe, comment, even share if you would like to. If YouTube isn't your favorite, but you found us here on YouTube, then if it's not your favorite place to listen to a podcast, then we are on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Go check one of those out. I like Spotify personally because we have the extra abilities to add polls and questions and Q&As and everything, so that's kind of fun. But
It would be nice if someone other than me
I
voted
put
in the
about a minute or so of effort into those polls, so it'd be nice for some interaction. But
Currently, it's really just which comic did Bill like the best.
That is the poll question.
Instead of which
that's
one was
been
the best, it's
commonly
which one did
occurring
I
is
like
which
the
story
best.
was your favorite. So if you have a favorite story and would like to leave your opinion, go click on that poll on Spotify. But anyways, we will see you all in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed, and peace out.
See you later, guys.
Have a good one, everyone.